Welcome to Podnutz Pro, show number 34. Podnutz Pro is a show where we take you from being the home PC tech and fixing viruses and reformatting hard drives, installing operating systems to then with networks and servers and subnetting and Class A, Class B, TCP/IP packets and routers and all that fun stuff. So, welcome to the show, Mr. Rainey, the star of the show. Without him, there is no show. What's up, man?
Oh, hi. Doing good, Lalo. Busy. I enjoyed a few slow weeks, but it's busy now, making me tired. How are you doing?
Good, man. It's been a long week. Last week was a 49-hour work week, and it's tough when you have one of those weeks because then it kills you the week after. Like you need time to recoup, So
Yeah, but unless you're taking vacation, you don't have time for that usually.
exactly, and for me that would be in December. So
Well, that's good. We'll see.
yeah, it's far away.
It's far away.
Yes, far away. All right, man. So what are we gonna be talking about today, sir?
I want to cover a few stories, just a few jobs that I had. Now, I know a few shows back I started covering small business server essentials, and I'm going to get back on that, but not this show. I want to go through the whole thing from start to finish. We left off at installing. The next step would be configuring the basic configuration. So we're going to pick that up again, maybe starting next week. But I want to cover some calls that I did this week, and then we got a bunch of emails to get to.
All right, great.
So the first job I want to talk about is I put a new Watchguard in at a client's office. And the reason we put this in is because they kept having lockups and they kept having to reset the router. It wasn't designed for how many people they had. I think they've got 40 users, and they host a few services in-house, FTP server.
What did
Of
they
course.
have before the watch guard? Out of curiosity.
I think they had a Linksys, and this is a company that when we first took over their work, they called us because a server kept crashing, and we went out there, and their server was actually just a computer, desktop board in it. So we've been upgrading them over time,
Okay.
and this is a remnant of that.
And for the folks at home, why is it that a small business needs a watch guard or a sonic wall or fill in the blank in regard to that $100 Walmart or Best Buy router?
Well, they're business class. They have, of course, better processes. The home user routers really are not doing much routing. They're built just to allow multiple computers to get online, and
Yeah.
that's home users, maybe 5 home users. They're not going to have any kind of security features, content filtering, VPN connection ability, web blocker. They can't block outgoing ports if you want to block SMTP from certain ports. So performance, security, that kind of thing.
Cool.
So replacing the WatchGuard is usually pretty easy, or replacing any router is usually pretty easy. Uh, I got into their old router. They only had 7 or 8 rules that I had to worry about. One of them being an FTP rule, which was ports 20 and 21 going to one of their servers. So recreated all that stuff, changed out the router, and whenever I change a router out, I, of course, test internet connectivity first. Then I'll do a few tests. I'll make sure remote web workplace is working. I'll make sure email can go out and come back in from the Exchange server. I'll make sure that it's blocked from other computers so we can't get out on port 25. Just a few basic tests to make sure the things are working. RDP into the server if I have that open or not.
And let me ask you this. Is there a checklist that you have developed that you go through and every time you implement a router? Or is it just you've been doing it for so long, you just know what to check for?
Well, I'll check for this. In this instance, it was an existing router. So the things that opened up were for email,
Okay.
remote web workplace, RDP to the server, FTP. So I tested all those to make sure the rules are working.
Gotcha.
So whatever port you're going to be opening, you want to make sure you're doing it right. So if you open up Exchange, a port for Exchange, send and receive mail. If you open it up RDP for something, RDP in, make sure it goes to the right place. So I tested all that stuff. Now, I did not test the FTP because I really didn't have any way to test the FTP at the moment. And I wasn't really concerned about it because I know the rule is right. Um, so I left. Everything worked. I get a call the next day saying, of course, the one thing I did not check is not working.
Don't you hate that?
Well, yeah, I do for a few reasons. uh, One is because I think, okay, I know it's working, and the rule is correct. I mean, so I log in the router, and one thing about the Watchguard router, it's got very good logging, so it's very detailed logging in the server in the management interface. So I look at the rule and I say, yeah, it's working, and the rule is correct. So I called her back, and of course, the call I get was FTP's not working. So the first thing to do was clarify the problem. I asked her, what do you mean FTP's not working? What are you doing or what are you seeing that leads you to believe that FTP is not working? So they have a main office and a satellite office.
Okay.
And the FTP program apparently is there's a program that they run that the clients sync up to the server, and it syncs up through FTP. So whatever software component is on the client side syncs to the server using FTP. So any changes they make or any changes on the server that are made by people in-house gets synced up to their client workstations, wherever they are.
Gotcha.
And I said, what's not working? First of all, what's not working? Is it the client, the people in the other state, or is it you? She says, well, the people in the other state are working fine. And I'm thinking, okay, they're the ones who should be using FTP.
Right, not in-house.
I said, what do you mean that it's not working in-house? Because the server's inside your network. So you shouldn't have any problems contacting the FTP server from workstations inside the network. So then we get the real problem. I look at the router and she goes, well, I'm gonna do it, because she couldn't really explain. And as users do, they can't really explain what they're doing. So I said, look, just any problem with the WatchGuard, I tell the client, first I check the IP of their computer so I can know what to filter for in the router. So I get her IP address and she runs whatever tool she's trying to run. And I see right away a deny message. And what I see is the source IP is the FTP server in-house, and the destination IP is the public IP of the WatchGuard, the external interface. So I had to think, I say, wait, why is this happening? You're internal, you're trying to connect, so the program works the same if you're in another state or if you're inside. Any changes on the client apparently go through FTP to the server. But what I found was, and then she tells me, of course, all the answers come in stages. She says, yeah, it works after a while. I said, what does that mean after a while? She goes, well, first it shows me that it can't connect to the public IP. Then it tries the internal IP and it works.
Ah.
So now we've got the problem. This software is hard-coded to try the external IP first. Then if it fails, it tries the internal IP. So what does that mean? That means that people who are out of the office, of course, are going to use the external IP first, and that works fine. The internal people, why on earth are they trying to use the external interface first? I think that's a bad programming decision.
But it's always behaved like this, because you say it was hard coded in the program, right?
Right. It's in the program. So this can't be changed. It could, because apparently I talked to software support for this program. If you change it there's only one configuration file. And this is pushed if you're internal or external.
Okay.
So that's why it's done. I think there should be two configuration files. One if you're an external client and one if you're internal, but there's not, and it can't be changed. So ultimately, the fix is you have to wait for it to time out, and it times out in about 10 seconds. But you do get an error that you have to click OK, and then it works with the second one.
Did they have the same behavior when they had the Linksys router?
No, and that's her question. Why is this happening? This is supposed to be a better router. Why is it not working the way it used to work? And that's when I had to explain to her, it's not working that way because it shouldn't work that way. It's doing what it's supposed to do. The Linksys router is too dumb to know that traffic is coming from the internal interface out and back in, which should never happen. There's no reason for if workstation A is trying to connect to server A, there's no reason to go to the internet to do that. It's internal. So what it's doing is it's going out the external interface and trying to come back in, and it can see where it's coming from. So it's doing a loop.
A loop, in which most routers don't like loops.
Most smart routers that are aware of anything are not going to allow that. And that just shows you what the Linksys is doing or not doing, that it can't detect this and block this.
Okay.
So, of course, her question is, can we set this router to do it? I said, no, we can't. I told her, there's no way to make this router stupid. I can't dumb down this router. And because even if I could, I wouldn't, because that's not good security. There is no reason for an internal computer to access the internet and come back in. It should just go. It shouldn't even be leaving the network.
So the client is calling this by IP address, right? Not by a name.
Right, IP address. So that software is configured to try the public IP, and apparently, if you change the public IP, you have to go in and change this configuration file. So I had to tell her, there's no way. This is a problem with your software.
Right.
This router basically is protecting you, so it can't do this. That's by design.
You made an interesting statement that some folks went at. You said that you filtered the traffic by the IP address, and for what Matt's saying, there is the router is capable of capturing all this traffic, but of course you don't want to look at all the traffic. You want to focus on the target PC and say, okay, show me all the traffic coming or going from this IP address, and that's where you can narrow down some of your issues.
Right, and you can filter it by, at least in the Watchguard, you can filter it by source IP, destination IP, port number. If you want to look at all traffic on port 25, you can do that. It's very nice report logging in this Watchguard.
Yeah.
And if you use a Watchguard, you're going to be familiar with it, or whatever interface you use, you'll be familiar. You have to learn how to use that logging or how to read it, because there are a lot, especially if you're doing content filtering or any kind of application filtering. When a user's whatever program website's not working, you're usually gonna have to go into that logging and see which rule is blocking it or allowing it where it shouldn't. So
gotcha. In fact, we had to do that yesterday for my daytime gig. Some user kept getting dropped off the VPN, so we had to filter the traffic by the IP address and see that some packets were dropping, and had to make some changes to the Cisco router. But all right, man.
Now this is also a good thing. Computer Pro Terry in the chat says one fix for this, and I agree, and I did recommend this. One fix is to change the configuration file to only be internal IP, which would mean the external users would have to have a VPN connected.
Right.
And I suggested that, but I can put this delicately. There's a cost associated with that for the VPN clients, because they had more than it came with like 5 mobile VPN clients.
The Watchguard
right? And there's more than that. I mean, I could do a site to site for the main office, but there's a lot of salesmen, and So she didn't want the cost associated.